the adage goes, you should always learn from your mistakes. That way, you've never really truly lost. And I think this is something that we should certainly take to heart going forward, because we know we want to, start the process and eventually one day rejoin sort of the European Union. We know we've got to go through the process, even though every time I bring this up, it's like, oh, you're not talking about, yes, we know there's a process we've got to go through, but we've got other stuff before we really get to that. But going through this process and learning those lessons and making people sort of understand what Brexit has actually done in terms of, loss of trade, investment, immigration, all kinds of stuff, the problems that Brexit has created, the fact that there is now, certainly at the potentially next general election, there will be an interesting push to see if how much this becomes an issue of, well, we can see Brexit isn't working, so what are you going to do to make Brexit work? Because as we've said a lot at this time, and as we've talked about with the potential rise of Nigel Farage, if you do not get Brexit into a situation where you go, okay, guys, this is Brexit. We've done everything we can to try and make it work, but this is as good as it's ever going to be, which to me seems to be the current Labour strategy. That way, you can head off Farage completely, because now Farage has to come back in and actually has to put forward his crazy libertarian deregulatory ideas, which no one would have voted for in 2016 if people like Farage and the Leave campaign had been honest about what it was they wanted to do to the UK. Like I say, you force him into that position. You can't let him get away from it by saying, oh, no, well, if you do this, Brexit will work. Then when you go, well, what do you mean by that, Farage? Nigel, what do you mean by that? So that would be certainly an interesting situation where we can sort of put Nigel on the back foot by, shall we say, making him say out loud what he would normally be the quiet part of what people don't hear, obviously, him say. So we're going to go into this because I think learning the lessons of Brexit, and at least now the public reaction that Brexit has failed, that it isn't working, does work in our favor. And the fact that people would not have voted to leave if the sort of the referendum was held today, we know that full well. So like I say, we are certainly on a bigger trajectory than a lot of people said. A lot of people said we'd be sort of maybe 5 or 6, 7 years away before we were hitting this point now. So we are in a really good spot and we are sort of winning on this front. So like I say, I'm disheartened by what I've heard Keir Starmer say, but to be honest, I am believing at this point that is his Brexit strategy. And to be honest, you look at sort of the political headwinds, at the political opportunities that certainly the Conservatives might have with maybe managing to even salvage themselves if even Keir Starmer said, well, okay, we're going to sort of rejoin the European and single market. Yeah, I'd much rather, shall we say, see a complete Tory wipeout than Starmer, shall we say, maybe handing them an accidental lifeline by calling for the UK to return to the UK in single market. Like I say, you've got to admit something, that this whole movement and rejoining does not exist in a political vacuum. There will be responses and there will be pushback. So that's why I've said you've got to go, this is Brexit. This is as good as it's ever going to be. It's never going to get any better than this. So that is the aim. That is the direction. And I think starting the conversations of, well, what does rejoining look like? How do we go about it? Do we sort of rejoin, the single market and customs union first, known as, of course, the European Economic Area? Like I say, that option was very much open to us. The Europeans were very fine with us as joining that. There was a bit of a ooh from Norway to begin with, but even then they went, okay, you can come in. We don't mind. Like I say, Norway, Iceland, and the rest of the EEA countries, will benefit from it as well. So it's not the biggest push, ever. And of course, a lot of people say, oh, well, we're Europeans, we don't want you back. But which politicians are saying that? There aren't many people. In fact, you had Guy Verhofstadt saying the same thing. You know, the UK would be welcome back into the the EU. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility, of course. But like I say, there is no one at the moment who is saying no, we will not allow the UK back in to the EU. That's just the facts, basically. So yeah, there is a clear path for us to go back. It is certainly seen that the EU would certainly welcome us back, but of course there are things we've got to sort out, of course, before that. Primarily, we've really got to basically show that Brexit hasn't worked, it was never going to work, and that the people who sold it to you were complete liars and charlatans who had an entirely different agenda that they wanted to push. Like I say, I think maybe at some point this week, I may have a look at the Reform's platform, their policies. That might be a good, interesting video. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see how well their website's laid out, but that might be quite a long video as well. So we'll have to see how that works out. But like I say, guys, going back to the beginning, learn the lessons of Brexit. And predominantly, the Remain campaign was very, very much one driven on if we do this, bad stuff will happen. But I think any sort of rejoin campaign has to be very, very much built on hope and what being in the EU can achieve for the UK. So this isn't just, nebulous promises like we saw from the Leave campaign. It's no, these are actual things that you will benefit from. And we know what those benefits ultimately are, because they're the exact same things that we've been talking about for the past couple of years that everyone complains that we've lost. And one drive certainly is we have to get businesses involved. There has to be a drive to get businesses to speak out, like we saw on Question Time very recently, where you had that wine merchant take on Jacob Rees-Mogg, tell him, no, you're lying. I deal with this directly every day. What you're saying that you're making it easy is completely false. That has to happen more often with these business owners and experts coming out, challenging people like Jacob Rees-Mogg, Nigel Farage, all these sort of, the true blue Brexiteers still saying you were wrong and you were false. Take, for example, Daniel Hannan, the guy who in 2016 was saying only a fool would leave the single market and customs union. Of course, as you know, my favorite quote from Daniel Hannan went on to then say, oh no, we should leave the single market and customs union, to now Daniel Hannan's new stated position of that it was wrong for us to leave the single market and customs union and that we should probably maybe rejoin it. Although in that regard, he seems to be unable to make his mind up about rejoining. Sometimes he says, yes, we should rejoin it. Other times he's not 100% sure on whether he should rejoin it. So bear in mind, calling out these people on these things and getting experts to sort of challenge them, business people getting to come out and say this is what the impact has been, that would send big waves, I think, through through sort of the Brexiteers. And as I've said, there should be a big focus on trying to get the fishing people onto our side. If we could do that, imagine for a second that we not only get the farmers but fishermen on our side to rejoin. What a coup. What an absolute coup that would indeed be. And bear in mind, we haven't done a lot of talking about fishermen this year in 2020, but that's because nothing has really changed. It's still really bad for fishermen. Like you say, go back to any video I did sort of this year or even last year, nothing has changed for them. They're still in the exact same position. It's a bad situation for them. But anyway, there you go. So that's the lessons of Brexit. Like I say, we certainly do need to learn them. But yes, as always, guys, like I say, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page, the one after link called Buy Me Coffee, the YouTube thank you button, the Pony Club, etc., etc. And of course, guys, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, we'll see you all next time.